Wally has been in a whole lot of wars, to use that word again.
You know, he really has. He's only lost once, but a lot of his fights have been very, very close, mostly because he is not a great puncher. And he admits he's not. He knows he doesn't have the killer instinct, really. He has hurt guys, but he has a very tough time putting them away, and that often makes his fights very, very close.
This fight here against Asif Dar was just one of many real brawls that Marshall has been in. When I say brawl, I don't mean a brawl between two guys who are trying to whack each other out, but just a couple of guys who are going to take and give a lot of punches.
That's right, and that's one thing about Tony Marshall. He does take more punches than the average boxer with his kind of a style, which makes for an interesting fight.
Another interesting thing about this fight is both these guys are guys who have made their living as boxers, and yet both feel they have to start whacking guys out if they're going to get the respect. That seems to be something that's just a sign of the times. Fighters don't feel they can be boxers.
Not only that, that's what the fans pay to come and see.
Well, we'll see. That's what they're both looking for tonight. Beasley and Marshall. They'll be getting it going. And to meet them, here's Max Weisberg. Max?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Fernwood Resort and Country Club here in Bushkill, Pennsylvania, where tonight, Top Rank Incorporated, in association with Fisticuff Productions and the undisputed, undefeated King of Beers, Budweiser, presents professional boxing for your entertainment. All bouts this evening are sanctioned by the Pennsylvania State Athletic Commission. Let's get things started with our first bout of the evening, scheduled for 10 rounds in the junior middleweight division. The referee for this contest is Joe Salsi. Introducing first, fighting out of the red corner, wearing the black trunks with the gold trim, he weighs in at 154 pounds, from Detroit, Michigan, with a record of 17-1-1, 5 by KO. Please welcome Lonny Honeybee Beasley. And his opponent, fighting out of the blue corner, wearing the black trunks with the gold, green, and red trim, he weighs in at 154 pounds, from Albany, New York, with a record of 13-2-4, 3 by KO. Let's hear it for Tony Marshall.
Wally, the last time we were here at the Fernwood Resort in Pennsylvania, there was a lot of things that didn't fall into the category of going by the rules, but let's talk about them anyway.
All right, well, if they follow the rules here in the Keystone State, the 3 knockdown rule is in effect. There is a standing 8 count. The doctor can stop the fight. The 10-point must scoring system. 3 judges score the fight, and a fighter can be saved by the bell only in the last round.
Pretty much as they are in almost every other state, aren't they? As we take a look at Lonny Beasley in the corner. Beasley with a record of 17-1-1, only 5 knockouts. And Tony Marshall, on the other hand, as we said, these guys really mirror images of one another. Marshall 13-2. He's had 4 draws. And there again, that's something that is going to befall a guy who fights like Marshall does.
Right, well, between them, they have 5. You know, that's a lot of draws for 2 fighters with barely 35 fights between them. So you know that they're in a lot of close fights. Not many knockouts, but a lot of punches thrown and landed.
Both wearing black trunks with a yellow stripe. Marshall, you know what flag that is? I just happen to know this.
That's why you asked me.
Yes,
you know I don't
it's
know
a setup. It's Guyana. It's Guyana, actually.
Okay. Wow. How did you know that?
I only knew it because a couple of fights ago he had the word Guyana on his trunks with a little flag, and same flag, and so I picked right up on that.
Very good.
I'm a student of the game.
Yes. That's what I like about you. The powers of observation are just incredible.
I'm a student of trunks. That's what It was interesting. Both these guys talked about how they feel they have to start knocking guys out. And I find that very interesting. Two guys who are good boxers.
Well, you know, it's been traditional in boxing that great boxers who are strictly great boxers don't sell a lot of tickets, perhaps Muhammad Ali being the exception, but most people would rather see a Mike Tyson come in and belt somebody out. That's what they pay to see. And it's interesting because a lot of times you don't get a lot of action with fighters like that, but that's what the fans really come for.
I want to mention before we go too far, Al Bernstein will rejoin us on Thursday night at the Villa Roma, participating in a rodeo in Colorado. He finished 5th. I'm sure America wants to know, 5th in the team penning competition.
Wow. That really is, you know, quite an accomplishment. I know that you also know quite a bit about team penning.
Oh, yeah, much as I do the Guyana flag.
In the meantime, Beasley is landing most of the good punches in this round, especially he had a good left hook just a few seconds ago that landed right on the chin of Marshall. There's a couple of right hands, too.
Both these fighters extremely confident. You know, again, when we talk to the fighters the night before a fight, you usually get a pretty good idea of who really feels they can win and who doesn't. Both these guys did.
That's a good sign. You know, I was talking with Bob Miller, the trainer-manager of Tony Marshall today, and he reminded me, first of all, that Marshall, although he gets hit a lot, has never been down. He's got a really good chin, although he seemed to stumble a little bit there after landing a good shot.
Hard to tell if the left-handed Beasley.
I think he was a little off balance there. I really do think he tripped. He's getting hit solid with a lot of those punches, Barry, especially the right hand.
Well, Beasley may have made a good point in the fact that Marshall maybe doesn't move his head as much as he should.
He's spitting blood now. He's been hit solidly several times in this first round.
Very good first round for Lonny Beasley. Here's a left hand from Marshall, but it's a slapping left hand as they exchange shots.
His head moves very well after he gets hit with that left hand from Beasley.
Not exactly the idea.
No.
Pretty good first round for Beasley, though.
Actually, it was a good first round overall and better for Beasley.
Here are the numbers in the first round, and both pretty productive.
Yeah, I thought that Beasley had a bigger edge than that, but I think that his edge was mainly in the harder punches, but there was a very good right hand by Marshall.
Marshall said he's been working on setting down on his punches, bending his knees when he throws his punches, trying to get a little bit more power.
You know, what makes a hard puncher is a mystery, Barry, and I've talked to trainers about this. I've done stories on it, and everybody seems to have a different idea of what makes punching power. It's very, very hard to teach. It's really hard to pick up later in your career or even, you know, after 17 or 18 fights.
Ray Leonard just talked about the pronation of punches, and he always felt that that was what made a power punch, how you turn your hand into a punch.
Well, you know, Ray's opinion is a lot better than mine on this, that's for sure. I think Tony pronated that right hand pretty well right there. Wow, Beasley right back with his own right hand. These guys basically can't miss each other so far.
Nice right hand from Marshall. Marshall, it's interestingly enough, 19 fights is a good combination for Marshall. He's only fought one fighter with a losing record, so they put him in there against some tough guys.
No, he has not been babied at all, that's for sure. One thing that I find interesting in this fight is that these are two guys with reputation of being boxers, and they're not really jabbing very much. They're both pretty much loading up, and you just saw it again when Marshall threw that right hand.
Now it goes back to what we were alluding to earlier, I think.
Yep. Knockouts sell tickets. You know, I think probably the best case in point of that is a fighter like Mike McCallum. This is an excellent boxer who never has been a big crowd pleaser because of that, because fans really come to see somebody get knocked unconscious, you know, rightly or wrongly.
Marshall heeding his corner's advice to go side to side.
Most of the pressure in this fight, Barry, coming from Lonny Beasley.
Well, Marshall has done some good counterpunching in the past and is doing it again tonight.
And going pretty well in the second round, and he even ducked a punch there.
Yeah, Marshall technically did more in the second round. Did go side to side. Gave Beasley a lot of different looks that time.
I liked Marshall in that round. I really did. I thought that the right hand especially was pretty effective for him.
The numbers in the second round, Beasley was busier, but Marshall a little bit, well, the same percentage. There you are. I was never very good in math.
Well, okay. I knew it was a close round. 5-point difference there for Beasley. I really thought the more effective punches came from Marshall that time. Good left hook to the body by Lonny Beasley.
Marshall's still trying to counter over the top of that.
A little bit short with that right hand. Again, you see that Beasley is the guy who has his feet planted in the ring, who's punching from a slightly better power base. Marshall moving around a lot so as not to get hit, but he really can't get set to punch with a lot of power.
Beasley made an interesting point, too. He said, the only time I ever tried to knock a guy out, I lost. That was his only loss.
Well, that'll break you of that habit in a hurry.
And he hasn't had a knockout since then. And that was 1987, I hasten to point out.
That was his loss to Oscar Pena.
Right.
A TKO in 3 rounds. Beasley was stopped. You know, that's one thing that you have to say about a fighter who knows his limitations and will then fight within that range from then on. And some fighters know that they're not punchers and they're not going to try, and jeopardize their chance to win a fight by trying to go for a knockout.
This continues to be exactly as advertised. Very close fight. Good body shot from Marshall.
That was right below the B in Beasley, I thought. A little bit south of the border.
That time Beasley countering Marshall.
Right now, Beasley looks like the stronger fighter. He really does. Marshall's off balance. You see when he misses, he almost falls down on some of those punches.
Lost his mouthpiece.
Good right uppercut by Marshall.
Yeah, some very close rounds. You could almost make a case, with the possible exception of the first round. Certainly these last two, you can make a case for either fighter. We'll be back to Fernwood Resort right after this.
To deal with the cattle or those guys. There's the punch I was talking about. Split the B and the E, and that's a borderline shot, but technically a low blow.
So we got a very competitive and very close fight between these two.
This is a really hard fight to score, and I'll tell you why. There's a lot of punches. That might be the most solid punch of the fight landed by either fighter, that right by Marshall.
And you can really see him consciously bend his knees and try to generate some power on that.
Well, and Beasley's still here.
Yes.
Enough said. But, I mean, there are a lot of punches being landed, and the punch count might actually have Marshall slightly ahead, but I kind of, just from watching the fight, I get the feeling that Beasley is the more dominant fighter.
Marshall rarely gets the best of it from the judges because his career has been dominated by his being a counter-puncher. As a matter of fact, Bob Miller said an interesting thing. He says most trainers will yell at their fighter during the course of the fight, be first, be first, be first. He says what we want to do is be last.
Yeah, when you're a counter-puncher, they yell, be second.
Left hand, but a slapping left hand.
He lands it a lot with the inside of the glove, Barry, almost on the wrist area, which is never going to generate much power. That was, I'm sorry, I think we're going to say the same thing. That was a good combination by Beasley, I thought, because he was right in there, boom, 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 never left his feet. Well, I noticed Marshall is starting to lunge a little bit. Is that what you were going to say?
Yeah, it is what I was going to say.
Okay. The right hand glanced off the shoulder of Marshall. Looked a little bit worse than it was.
Beasley has a tendency to loop his power punches. He has this nice straight jab, but he comes from outside in with his power punches.
Power punch might be a misnomer in this fight. Although I'm glad we're sitting down here and not up there, but the record says that neither one of these fighters is a real powerful puncher. Okay, please. Speaking of looping, you can see right there all of those punches caught on the shoulders and elbows of Tony Marshall.
Beasley also just took a step back and took a deep breath. And this is the type of fight that could easily come down to a conditioning fight.
They both seem to be in very, very good shape.
So we come the end of round number 4, and the fight that has been exactly as everybody had hoped. Very close.
This has to be frustrating. There's about as good a right hand as Tony Marshall can throw. Boom, right behind the ear, and I don't think Beasley even blinked, but it does count as a connect.
And of course, the problem with Marshall being unable to generate much power with his best shot is that fighters, not so much like Beasley, but if he gets against a guy who really is someone who concentrates on trying to get his man out of there, he's going to just start to walk through him and show him no respect.
Right. And speaking of connects, well, first of all, here it is. You see, this just in from CompuBox, 1-punch edge for Beasley. However, in power punches, he has an edge 97 to 65. And I think that's really the big difference in the fight. Not the number of punches landed, but the quality of them. And right now, Beasley does look a little bit tired. And those 2 punches, I don't know where they came from.
I was just going to say, and he's not doing as much in this round, and a lot of fighters will take a round off on occasion. I don't believe Beasley is doing that.
If he is, he better take it off a little bit more carefully than this. I mean, those last 2 punches came like from Essex County somewhere, which for those of you who don't know is about 40 miles east.
There's Marshall with a nice combination that actually stood Beasley up for a moment. I really do believe Beasley is getting tired.
Wow, he really looks like he's coming apart in a hurry, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's just resorting to tricks here.
Yeah, I mean, there are ways to take a round off, you know, and this is not one of the recommended ways to do it.
Pretty good left hand from Marshall, but again, and a right hand right on the button, but Beasley doesn't go anywhere.
Beasley looks like he's completely gassed, and he's lost all his discipline. You see the way he got nailed with those shots because his hands are down.
That was a good left hand from Marshall, too. By far, Marshall's best round of the fight. By far.
They're very excited in the corner of Marshall. I think they know that this is his chance. He might even be able to score a rare KO. He's got a very tired opponent.
Yeah, arm-weary opponent. Now he has to get out of the mold, which he's doing, of being a counterpuncher.
Beasley still coming forward as the round ends.
But it's really more leaning forward than coming forward.
Maybe falling forward.
That may be even a better way to describe it. Going to take you to the corner of Lonny Beasley. And listen in.
Your hand, you can't keep your right hand higher. How you feel? You be wet down a little bit? Come on, man. Put yourself together. What you doing? This ain't you. You're a honeybee. That's it. Do what you're supposed to do, man. We come too much. Come on now. Let's go. Wake up. Wake up. Yeah, wake up, bitch. Wake up, Lonny. Oh. Deep breath. Deep breath.
All right, here we'll see Marshall lands a good 1-2, kind of a looping left and then a good straight right, and this is pretty much how the round went the whole way. Short right hand on the inside again for Marshall, and again you see that Beasley was just completely losing his form, no defense. And that's because he was exhausted.
Yeah, and you look in the corner and you don't see any signs that this is going to get any better for Lonny Beasley.
Well, we'll see. Sometimes that 60 seconds will do wonders. I mean, he could hardly even hold his hands up in round 5.
Lonny Beasley took 4 years off in his boxing career. He went in the Army for 4 years. He fought professionally for 2 years. And he went in the Army. And he took 4 years off. And he said while he was in the Army, he didn't box at all. He went up to 190 pounds.
Well, that's a well-rested fighter, if nothing. Again, look at that. Right on the nose in terms of punches thrown, but a big edge that round for Marshall, which I think was clear even without the computer.
And it alludes to what you were speaking of, that his form just went south.
Well, that's what happens, you know, when a fighter gets as tired as Beasley did in that round, the first thing that goes is the fundamentals. You just go right back to the old street fighting days.
I'm surprised Beasley even threw 90 punches now.
I think he kind of slung them more than threw them. But he is holding it a little bit together a little bit better in this round, I would say. So far.
Right hand from Marshall.
That can change.
That time Beasley ducked right into Marshall's right hand.
You notice his hands are getting low again, which is how he spent most of round 5, with his hands down around the waist.
And again, Marshall needs to now think like an aggressor.
Right, this is his spot right here. And you know, this is one of the things that I spoke with Bob Miller about earlier today. He said, this guy can punch a little bit, he just doesn't have the killer instinct. I've seen him have guys on the way out and just couldn't finish them. And I think that he would say the same thing about round 5.
And again, Beasley's hands, you can see at his waist, leaning in a lot and generating very little with his punches.
He's not even standing his ground anymore, I think, because his legs are not very strong underneath him. If there was anything we commented on in the first 4 rounds of this fight, Barry, is that Beasley was holding his ground and going forward most of the way. The past 2 rounds, he's been pretty much in reverse.
And also throwing one punch at a time.
There's this good combination from Marshall.
With the right hand quickly behind the left. As we come to the end of the 6th round, and the tenor of this fight clearly changing into the corner of Tony Marshall.
Okay, rounds are 3 minutes long, Barry, and Marshall won 2 minutes and 59 seconds and then got nailed right at the bell for round 6.
Probably will not make a great deal of difference on the cards, however.
No.
Beasley starts this round with a little bit more offense. But Marshall's really getting off quicker now.
Well, Beasley now trying again to put the pressure on that he was putting on earlier, Barry, except that now he's a different fighter and he's pretty much wide open. Marshall did all the scoring off the ropes there.
Double jab, Tony. Double jab.
There again was a perfect example of that looping right hand that you mentioned before from Lonny Beasley.
Numbers through 6 rounds, you can see Marshall now getting a pretty decided edge. Remember how close it was, 130, 129 at one time.
Well, that edge clearly was made up in the past 2 rounds. In fact, in round 6, Marshall out-connected Beasley 2-1.
Still to come, of course, our main event, Prince Charles Williams making his comeback fight after losing his light heavyweight championship against Art Bayless, a guy who truly believes that he can win the fight. Ringside report, kind of a special edition tonight. We'll take a look at some of the inductees into boxing's Hall of Fame.
Yes, a ceremony that I attended and had a very, very good time at last week.
You're not in it yet?
Any day now. Once I finish paying off my plaque.
As soon as they build that writer's wing.
Right. As soon as I donate $10,000. No, that's not how it's done.
Also going to be talking to Larry Holmes, who is in attendance.
Larry, I think would be safe to say is a future Hall of Famer. Maybe he'll be the first one to go in the Hall of Fame and then fight afterwards.
I was just going to say.
Marshall's spending a lot of time against the ropes in this round because Beasley is coming forward, but Beasley is basically coming forward and getting hit.
But Marshall has really turned this fight in his favor. The question is, how much of a lead did Beasley get in the early part of the fight?
Well, remember, a lot of those early rounds were close, and we were having trouble really deciding which way, to score them. A couple of the rounds, Marshall may have had the numerical edge in punches, but we thought Beasley was winning on basis of punching power, so who knows? I mean, Marshall might be ahead by a wide margin. Beasley doing the Tommy Morrison walk-away right there.
Worked for him.
Yes, it did.
And another very good round for Marshall. Certainly a round that he did enough to win.
All right, Tony, listen. Listen, you got to have this next. You got to have this next 3 rounds. What you got to do is you got to be aggressive. Aggressive. Close the distance. Close the distance and back. This kid cannot punch backing up. You ready?
Tony, this kid is tired of shit, baby. He's tired of shit, Tony. Tony, do you hear me?
Cable television, but it's the right thing.
You got to go aggressive. You got to go right at this kid.
All right, here we see Marshall now scoring off the ropes and then gets away from Beasley. I'll tell you what, his corner's got this thing scored slightly differently than we do. They think he needs the last 3 rounds. There's another good right in there by Marshall. I think that he's turned the fight, and I know you do think he's decisively turned the fight in his favor over the past 3 rounds.
I do, but I think it's what his corner is thinking about are the 4 draws that he's had.
And that lack of killer instinct. Right. Still got to finish the show.
Gotta win this, Tony. This round. Let's go.
And I remember having a very similar discussion as we're having here about how Tony Marshall was winning the fight when he fought Julio Flores, and Flores won the fight.
Well, that's the subjectivity of boxing scoring. Another mystery.
Here are the jabs through 7 rounds, and Marshall, of course, living and dying on the jab considerably more than Beasley.
Wow, and I'll tell you something. For a guy who doesn't move his head very much, I noticed that Marshall has eluded over 130 jabs from Beasley. Been very few of those in this fight. Not too many clinches at all. In fact, that might be the first time the referees had to separate them all.
Very possible, yeah. Marshall getting much the better of that exchange. Not even sure you can call it an exchange.
No, it's a pretty one-way exchange, I would say. Right now, Marshall landing all the clean punches, and it's an amazing turn of events here. I mean, after the first 4 rounds, it looked like Beasley almost couldn't miss winning by a KO.
And Beasley seemed to hit the bottom of the tank all at once.
He really did. In round 5, it just seemed like everything went out of him, and the discipline was gone, the crispness of the punches was gone, and he really hasn't gotten a second win.
It's not that he hasn't gone a distance. His last fight was a 12-round fight. It was for a quasi-championship, the IBO. You tell me what that is. Junior middleweight championship.
We now have 368 men claiming to be world champions.
Yeah, that's right.
Marshall now showing a little bit of weariness. However, it's a lot easier to push that off when you're winning the fight or when you think you're going to win the fight. I'm not sure that Beasley still thinks he's going to win this fight.
Now, the tempo is slowed appreciably in this 8th round. But still, I believe Marshall has done enough to win the round. We'll be back.
Clem, our technical director, is an uppercut.
That's what that was.
That was an uppercut.
Yeah.
Not exactly the way it's done in the book.
No.
But it landed.
No, that was a running uppercut.
Yeah.
But you don't see those very much.
But in all seriousness, that kind of shows you that Lonny Beasley has kind of let his fundamentals get away from him in the past couple of rounds. A lot of punches thrown in this fight. You can see right there, they've combined for just about 1,200 punches and a decided edge now for Tony Marshall.
73-punch edge, and it was only 4 or 5 rounds ago. Only 4 or 5 rounds ago that the edge was won.
Right, exactly right. So that tells you this has really been 2 different fights. 1 through 4, and then from 5 on. It's been all Tony Marshall.
Incidentally, I want to mention, just the case in point, this, that anybody can have a bad night. Joe Salsi, the referee in this fight, has been excellent by the fact that you haven't noticed him.
He really hasn't had very much to do. He has done a good job. I think he's only had to break that one clinch that we saw last round, but for the most part, the two fighters have kept the action moving pretty well.
And he had a very bad night the last time we were here, and we were very hard on him, so I just want to sort of give the other side of that issue.
So now here's where they would really love, in Tony Marshall's corner, to see their man go in there and score a knockout, because sometimes a fighter like Marshall will start to believe that he can't knock people out and will just give up on the whole idea. Now, if he could get Beasley out of here, who knows? You know, he may go in next time thinking, hey, you know, I'm not that bad a puncher. Maybe I can get this guy out of here.
Well, he talked about it at length, and he talked about it as if he really felt he could generate more power. Now, we haven't necessarily seen that tonight, although I do believe he has to be satisfied with his performance. That was a good right hand. That might have hurt Beasley a little bit.
But actually, Beasley also had a pretty good sequence there, and probably one of his better ones since round 4 or 5. Punching a little bit shorter than he had been, but right again, Marshall was just crisper all the way.
Both fighters are tired now, although I think Beasley is more tired than Marshall is.
Well, Beasley's been in dire straits in terms of conditioning since round 4. We know that. But Marshall, I think, joined him a little bit last round.
So there'll be 3 minutes left in this fight. It's going to be interesting to hear what Marshall's corner has to say between rounds. We'll tell you about it right after this. Final round. Tony Marshall. Now on the left of your screen, Lonny Beasley on the right. And Marshall has taken the fight by the throat in the last 5 rounds.
I've got Marshall actually at this point 3 points ahead, Barry, and that's overcoming a deficit of a couple of points after round 4 when it looked like Beasley couldn't lose. But who knows the way it's being scored in the official eyes.
Between rounds, Bob Miller had this to say to Tony Marshall.
Now look, you got to stay on this guy, make him punch for 3 minutes.
Tony, you don't give him your punches that you can use that can work.
3 minutes, Tony.
That's what you got to do.
Stay right on top of him.
That's the way you got to do it.
Nothing left. Yep.
Well, I think that's well put, and that's what Marshall's been trying to do here.
I'm just wondering if they're just saying that to make sure their fighter doesn't let down, or if they kind of think that the fight is closer than you and I think it is. You know, I think that to play it safe, any corner should send their fighter out to do everything in the final round. I don't believe in taking the round off if you think you've got a clear-cut win. But I just wonder if Bob Miller has an inkling that maybe the scorecards are closer than we all think. Or you and I think, anyway.
I think it would be hard to make a case for Beasley, and certainly in the last 5 rounds.
Well, I agree with that, but, you know, stranger things have happened.
Stranger things usually happen.
That's right.
About halfway through the final round now. And Marshall has won the first half of this round also.
Well, this is more clinching than they've done in the previous 9 rounds, so we're looking at 2 very tired fighters who've earned that rest, I might add. And a lot of punches thrown in this fight.
Marshall again getting the better of that exchange on the ropes.
You know, that one happened right above us, and you can really see that a lot of those punches from Marshall, though, do slap. He does hit with the inside of the glove quite a bit and doesn't get that much shoulder into it.
And in Marshall's corner with 30 seconds left, they yell for him to come on, meaning come on in.
I think we pretty much expected that there would be no knockout in this fight, although halfway through it looked like there might have been.
Yeah.
Good finish.
Beasley is staggered from a right hand. But there will be no knockdown. A fight that really was exactly as advertised.
Right, exactly. A lot of punches landed. Nobody really hurt badly. I think the big surprise was that Beasley got as tired as he did early in the fight.
And so suddenly.
Yeah, really, and after a round that he won. You know, which is pretty unusual. A lot of times when a fighter takes a bad pacing in a round, he might be tired in the next round, but I mean, the fight seemed to be going his way at that point.
So we await the decision, and while we do listen to the game coming down here, everybody's just kind of waiting for Dallas Green just to let go.
Oh, yeah, and I don't know how he's held this temper for the past 3 weeks.
Well, I saw a line from him saying that mediocrity would be a step up, which I thought was kind of nice.
Brutally honest,
yeah,
as
really,
always.
He said we can't field, we can't pitch, and we can't hit. Other than that, we're less than mediocre. 49% effectiveness from Marshall, and believe me, most of that coming over the final 5 rounds, and Beasley did almost all his damage early in the fight, as you pointed out, Wally, 2 different fights.
It really wasn't. I think that over the second half, Marshall clearly did enough to win the fight. I don't think there should be any doubt about this.
There's a look at Lonny Beasley, and now he seems refreshed. Unfortunately, it's a little late. So we're going to go to Max Weisberg for the decision. Max.
Ladies and gentlemen, we go to the scorecards where we have a split decision. Judge Castellani scores it 97-95 Marshall. Judge Glasser scores it 98-93 Beasley. And Judge Richard Strange scores it 96-94 for the winner, Lonny Honeybee Beasley.
Well, pretty much what we said, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly, right?
That's crazy. I don't know.
Well, particularly what is crazy is 98-93. I mean, I don't see how you can do it. We'll be back. Tony Marshall, I'm sure a disappointed Tony Marshall. Wally?
No, it's both of us, Barry, because I felt the same way you did. Tony, the only thing to ask you is what's your opinion of the decision?
Poor decision, very poor decision. I thought I had that. I really thought I had that fight.
Well, one of the knocks on you has been that you're not a knockout puncher. There seemed to be a point where Beasley was hurt and that you may have had a chance to finish him off. What do you think the problem was in not ending the fight early?
I think he was a little awkward. You know, I tried to get in there and do what I had to do, but he was a little awkward at style, so I couldn't get in there and finish him the way I wanted to.
Did you notice a perceptible change in him after a couple of rounds? I mean, it seemed to us that after the 4th round, he got very, very tired.
He wasn't throwing nothing. I thought I was the one landing all the shots.
Well, what do you do from here, Bob? What were you telling him in the corner?
Well, he's pulling away. He had him hurt. Instead of staying on him, he always has a tendency to take a step or 2 back. And as a result, he recovers a little bit, and he's not able to finish him up. He's a defensive guy, and he hits him 2 or 3 times and steps back. It's like a habit. It's a habit he has to break.
Anything you think you should have done differently?
Throw a lot more punches. Stand there, stun the guy, keep the fight a lot more busy. But next time.
All right, Tony, thank you very much. We're going to bring Lonny Beasley in now, the winner of the fight here. The crowd was not too happy with the decision, but obviously Lonny was. Lonny, the crowd booed the decision somewhat. Were you confident that you had won the fight?
I know I won the fight. It was a close fight because I only had like 2 weeks to get ready for him. He was a mover. I had to take it to him. I'm usually a mover too. I made the fight. When I did back up, I out-jabbed him. And I pressed the fight. The crowd hollered every time he hit me. When I hit him, it's very quiet. So, of course, it looked like he's doing better than he really is. But if you count the punches.
To our eyes at ringside, it seemed like it was almost 2 different fights. It seemed like you were pretty much in control for 4 rounds, and then you seemed to get very tired after round 5 or so. What was the problem?
Well, I only had like 2 weeks to get ready for this fight. They called me, he was scheduled to fight somebody else. He probably been getting ready for 2 months for this fight. I'm going to take it to his hometown, and I was going home with it. How you doing, Detroit? Vanessa, everybody, what's happening?
All right. Lonny Beasley, very happy with the decision. He might be in the minority here, but back to Barry at ringside.
All right, thanks, Wally. Well, the fact is, Lonny, we did count the punches. We have people who we pay a lot of money to do. 1 punch difference through 5. It wound up an 87 punch difference.
Las Vegas. There's a collection of stuff that's owned by Ring Magazine in New York. But the one in Canastota is really done very, very well. And I spent the weekend up there. I saw Marvelous Marvin Hagler, and I saw Alexis Arguello and Joey Giardello. It really was a very, very great weekend.
Yeah, a lot of times, as a matter of fact, you might question some of the people that are going into this Hall of Fame or that Hall of Fame. No question about the people that went into this one.
Oh, absolutely not. This is a labor of love. I mean, they've really put a lot of time and effort into this, and you can see that they get a big, big turnout there. Luckily, the weather was fabulous, and there he is. Anybody who knows boxing recognizes that bald head right there.
Yeah, a guy who I really feel has been a long time coming to get his just due. He got it last week.
I know it's hot up here, and everybody, I believe, wants to go, so I'm going to try to make this quick. I have to say that this is the most exciting day of my life. As you know, which I will make real quick, when I won the title back in 1980 in London, I never had the opportunity to show my belt to the world. But now I'm here today being inducted into the Hall of Fame, which I still feel that I'm too young. But I want to show you people, here's the ring, okay? All right, here we go. All right. But what goes along with this ring is a lot of people who has helped me, because without these people, I could have never been here. My family, my mother, and also my kids who stood behind me all the way, my family, I love very dearly, and I'm glad they all came. But most important is my manager and trainer, because when I stepped in the gym years ago, I'm speaking about Pat and Goody Petronelli.
Well, Wally, I think that's one of the things that really is the most interesting, is that he did thank Pat and Goody Petronelli, rather, because there was a little bit of a rift after the Leonard fight.
Oh, yeah, and just them and his family, which, you know, I thought was it's really quite amazing to see. I mean, he's got the hand gestures and everything, and it's just too much, and unfortunately, it didn't really come through in that fight.
It's really true. I am glad, though, as you mentioned, to see him get his just due. He's without a page out of his book, huh?
No, he's borrowing a page out of my book. I think I had a little bit more gift than he